In this video I'll show you several Sega Genesis and Sega CD, even Master System games running directly from my rarest console, a JVC X'Eye. And this video is divided into 3 parts, including several chapters in the YouTube interface. First I'll talk a bit about the X'Eye itself, then I'll explain the equipment I've used for the gameplay captures, and finally I'll show you several Sega Genesis and Sega CD games, some Master System games running directly on the X'Eye. So let's talk a little bit about the Sega Genesis. As a kid I didn't have the privilege of owning one, but my cousin did have one. He had a Mega Drive, and because of that I played lots of Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 as a kid, and besides that I read a lot about it in magazines, and I always saw both the console and its games in stores and always wanted to play one. And as a kid, my first contact with the 16-bit generation was through a Mega Drive that my father rented, and the game that came with it was Tasmania, which I remember enjoying a lot at the time. It was only recently that I got a Sega Genesis for my collection, which actually is a Mega Drive, a Japanese one, that I received as a gift from a friend who lives in Japan. And I have already featured this Mega Drive in a dedicated video here in the channel, and even though I only got my Mega Drive in 2023, I had already been building a Genesis collection since 2012 when I moved to Canada. I bought a lot of games locally, and also I got a lot of games through a Brazilian retro game store called A Casa do Videogame, which I highly recommend if you're in São Paulo, Brazil. And last year I had the chance of buying an X'Eye. I bought it at a Brazilian event called RetroCon in 2023 from a store called Mr. Games. And now you might be wondering, what exactly is a JVC X'Eye? Basically, it's the North American version of a console called Wondermega. And both the X'Eye and the Wondermega are high-quality combos of a Sega Genesis with a built-in Sega CD, something that Sega did itself through the CDX, but the Wondermega and the X'Eye were of higher quality when compared to the CDX. So much so that nowadays it's hard to find a CDX that can actually read discs, while my X'Eye continues to work perfectly. And here I need to make an observation. This X'Eye of mine underwent a complete review at Gamescare, so it's been taken care of. I want to keep it working for as long as possible. I couldn't find many references online about how many X'Eye units were produced. I found a website saying that there were around 10,000 units produced, and Gaming Historian here on YouTube has a video dedicated to the X'Eye in which he mentions that there were around 10,000 units sold. My model of the X'Eye is compatible with the 32X, but it doesn't allow for disc swapping when running Sega CD 32X games. There's a rare variant of the already rare X'Eye that allows for disc swapping, and here you can see one. This footage is thanks to Retro Dog Games. They own one and sent me this video so I could share it with you. The X'Eye originally came with a 3-button controller with the JVC symbol in the middle. I don't own one unfortunately, but it's compatible with any Genesis controller. In terms of appearance and functionality, here are some details. The power and reset buttons are on the left side of the console. The cartridge input is large and accepts Japanese games without issues. On the right side is the disc tray. In the front we have 2 controller inputs. On the right side there's a volume control, a microphone input and a headphone output, and the microphone input is used for karaoke discs. And on the back we have the power connector and also audio and video outputs. In order to save Sega CD games, the X'Eye has an internal rechargeable battery. Mine doesn't work properly anymore, and instead of replacing it, I went with what I see as the best alternative, using an Everdrive X-Live model to simulate a Sega CD backup RAM card. And one observation regarding the use of Everdrives of Mega Drive, Sega Genesis, Everdrives with the X'Eye: Master System games do not work on the X'Eye via Mega Drive, Sega Genesis Everdrives. I did capture 2 Master System games for this video, but in order to do so I did something a bit sketchy that I don't recommend. I opened my analog Mega SG Master System adapter and connected it directly in the X'Eye. Regarding the equipment I used to capture gameplay, I obviously used my X'Eye, which is original from the factory. It was maintained at Gamescare but has no mods. I used a SCART cable from Insurrection Industries, which is excellent. I only bought it because I forgot to get one with Gamescare, but this one's really good anyways. And regarding the X'Eye, it's compatible with Sega Genesis Moto 2 cables. To convert SCART to HDMI, I used a RetroTink 4K, and for the gameplay captures, I used a new capture card, my Elgato 4K Pro. And now let's get to the games. I'll start with 2 Master System games, then I'll show lots of Mega Drive games, and then I'll move on to Sega CD games. Make sure you stay to the end because there are a lot of special games being showcased here. And an important reminder, this video is also an experiment to see how games run on current displays. When the X'Eye was released, the standard displays were CRT TVs, which blend adjacent pixels, and that creates the sensation of more simultaneous colors and also of more rounded edges. The experience with an X'Eye or a Sega Genesis in the 90s was, of course, different than what you will see here. And be mindful also that with solid blacks, YouTube's compression creates some visual noises and artifacts that are not present in my raw footage. With my sketchy use of the analog Master System adapter, I played a bit of Sonic, which is awesome. I love the Master System Sonic. It's not simply a downgraded version adaptation of the Sega Genesis game. It's its own standalone experience. And one thing that I noticed, and I don't know if it's present on actual Master System hardware, are slowdowns, and those do distract a little bit when playing the game. Another Master System game I captured was Ghouls'n Ghosts. Awesome game, super difficult, and also one with slowdowns. Now let's get to Mega Drive, to Sega Genesis games. And I'll start with one of the highlights of the Sega Genesis launch, Altered Beast. This game was adapted from the arcades to the Genesis and was very impressive for its time. Not only because of the graphics with huge sprites and advanced animations, but also because of the digitized voices. This is a fun 2D beat 'em up, and as we progress and defeat wolves, we get orbs that make the character more powerful, and eventually the character transforms into a beast. So yeah, Altered Beast. Anyway, it's a game that is worth trying, especially for its historical value.
Welcome to your doom.
A very famous Sega franchise from the 90s is Shinobi. And in the X'Eye, I tested 3 Shinobi games. The first one I didn't like so much. I found it very repetitive, a bit monotonous. The second one I need to play more, but from what I've seen, it's super difficult. And the third Shinobi game, I really enjoyed. It has a very good variety of stages and enemies, and it seems to be really well balanced in regards to difficulty. At least in the stages I tried. I definitely need to revisit both the second and the third Shinobi games, because those I enjoyed. A game that I know that the retro gaming community loves is this one, Castle of Illusion. This is a 2D Mickey platformer with beautiful graphics and fun stages. The game soundtrack is very cute. Interestingly, instead of having lives, we have tries. That was Disney's way not to have Mickey die. And here's a very unique game. This is Terrania. And this game has a phenomenal presentation, and the gameplay is fun but also very complicated. The controls are really hard actually. In this game we control an airship. We have to accomplish different objectives throughout the scenarios while facing difficult enemies and managing fuel. The game setting is spectacular. A Sega franchise that was very successful in the arcades and that appeared on the Genesis was Golden Axe. I really enjoyed this game as a kid, and to this day I think it's very fun and charismatic. It's a beat-em up with all the conventions of the genre, like combos, grabs, and such. It features very impressive visuals. The specials especially are amazing, and we also have very unique animals that we can mount that are lots of fun. Another acclaimed beat 'em up from Sega is Streets of Rage, which shamefully I've rarely ever played, but I decided to capture gameplay from the beginning of the first game for fans of the franchise, and obviously I want to try all Streets of Rage eventually. A Sega racing game that I really enjoyed as a kid was Outrun. I love the variety of scenarios and the soundtrack of this game. Oh my god, it's amazing. And this game is also a good challenge. The very first FIFA game appeared on the Genesis. It was FIFA International Soccer.
EA Sports. It's in the game.
Which is a very simple soccer game. And please don't hate me for using soccer instead of football as the way of describing it. Anyways, at the time of release, it was a fun game. It's still fun to play. And in the little time I played it for this video, I scored a great goal and then I got cheated. Check it out. For sure, I was cheated by the referee. The Sega Genesis received what I consider the best Castlevania from the initial phase of the franchise, from before Symphony of the Night. I'm talking about Castlevania Bloodlines. This game is amazing, amazing. It features one of the best soundtracks of the generation. Two playable characters that have distinct gameplay styles. It's very fun, features many stages, and the visuals in this game are beautiful. And with several special effects that were very advanced for the time. I highly recommend this game. And now a game with a super confusing name, which is the consequence of a copyright mess from what I understand. This is Wonder Boy 5 Monster World 3. This is an action-adventure 2D platformer. and it was also the game used as the basis for Tectoy to make Monica in the Land of Monsters. Visually, these games are beautiful, very charismatic. I find the movement in the games a bit slow, but it's a matter of getting used to the pace of the game. And a game that I think is impressive to have come out on the Sega Genesis is this one, Super Street Fighter 2. I don't think the gameplay here is as fluid as in the arcade or 32-bit versions, but it's impressive that this game is in the Genesis, and it's also fun to play. A game that is still discussed to this day is this one, Aladdin, because a lot of people will talk about preferring the Super Nintendo version or the Genesis version. Personally, I prefer the Super Nintendo version, but that's the one that I played as a kid. Which one do you prefer? Sonic, of course, appeared in several games on the Genesis, and I'll start with the one that I consider to be the worst one, Sonic Spinball. This game was developed to fill the gap between releases of the numbered games in the franchise, and it's a game that I really enjoyed back when it was released, but nowadays I find it very weak. And what bothers me mostly is the frame rate, because this game would flow and play much better at 60 FPS. And Sonic obviously appeared in several other games on the Genesis. The very first game was Sonic the Hedgehog, which is a true work of art. The soundtrack of this game is insane, the visuals are beautiful, the gameplay is lots of fun. And there's two gameplay aspects that I would like to mention. First, the fact that this is a very accessible game for children because of the rings system, because of how the rings work in the game. And another thing is that the internal conflict that we have to manage when playing it. Should we go fast and take risks? Or should we take it easy, go slower, move forward safely? Nowadays, I find myself playing Sonic at a slower pace, which usually gives me time to appreciate the level design. I love this game and I highly recommend it. Sonic 2 is another amazing game that I played a lot as a kid. The game is a clear evolution of the first one, and I love Tails. It's a really cool character that first appeared in Sonic 2. Sonic 3 is a game that I barely played when it was released, but I remember that it was very impressive for its time. However, Sonic 3 is a game that does not represent the complete vision that Sega had for it. Because of that, the next installment in the franchise, Sonic & Knuckles, had a lock-on system, so we could connect Sonic 3 to Sonic & Knuckles, and then have an experience that actually represented the original vision for Sonic 3. And you can also connect Sonic 2 to Sonic & Knuckles, so you can play Sonic 2 as Knuckles. Let's continue with more Sonic, but now moving on to Sega CD games. First, This is the X'Eye interface for running games on CD. And here's Sonic CD, a game that follows the style of the first Sonic, but obviously with new stages and new gameplay mechanics, including time travel. I played and finished Sonic CD for the first time in 2023, and I really enjoyed the game. I admit that I didn't find it as good as Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, but it's a fun game, and it was in Sonic CD that Amy and Metal Sonic first appeared. Unfortunately, the Sega CD library is full of awful releases. One of them is this one, Mega Race. This game is awful. It's infested with FMVs that are bad, really bad.
Welcome to Mega Race, the action show.
And the gameplay segments are really bad as well. So stay away from this garbage.
Wait a minute. I've got an idea. Let's call the next contestant.
Fortunately, there are also amazing games on the Sega CD, including some awesome shmups. And only recently I started properly exploring and discovering shmups, so let me show you some Sega CD shmups that I tried for this video. I'll start with Keio Flying Squadron, which is super difficult, also features beautiful graphics with very vivid, very saturated colors. The game also has some weird cutscenes. Feace is super difficult, it also features an amazing soundtrack. And this is a game I want to further explore to see if I can beat it. Robo Aleste has a bizarre story presentation and also features super difficult gameplay. And the shmup that I enjoyed the most was Lords of Thunder. I had already tried this game via the PC Engine version because of my Analog Duo video, and with the Sega CD version I ended up playing the game from start to finish. It's so good I couldn't stop playing it. This game features a great variety of scenarios. It's also very accessible for those starting out in the genre, because it features a life bar instead of featuring one-hit kills. Also, this game features an awesome soundtrack, so I highly recommend it. A Sega game that was very successful during the Genesis era was this one, Ecco The Dolphin. And this is the Sega CD version of Ecco. Ecco is a very difficult game, which features challenges that are hard to understand and also labyrinthic scenarios to explore, but I think it's a fun and engaging game in the end. The most famous Sega CD RPG is probably Lunar, which I showed in my Japanese Mega Drive video, and then another Sega CD RPG, not as famous as Lunar, but also from working designs, is this one, Vei. I played only the beginning of the game for this video and I found it quite nice, quite interesting. It features beautiful graphics, cool soundtrack, and the first few minutes were quite enjoyable despite being very easy. This one is in my backlog. Here's the very first game in a very famous, very popular fighting franchise. This is Mortal Kombat. And I don't have much to say about it because it's Mortal Kombat. And here's a 2D platformer with action and adventure elements. This is Popful Mail. This game has a very charismatic, whimsical look, and the gameplay is very similar to Wonder Boy in Monster World. Fun game. And here's the holy grail of every Sega CD collector, Snatcher. a Kojima game that takes place in a cyberpunk future and which is better directed and presented than many current games. I only played the beginning of the game because it's been in my backlog for a long time, and when I pick it up I want to properly play it till the end. But from the little bit I spent with it, I was very impressed with its presentation. And guys, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to watch my Japanese Mega Drive showcase, which features some games that I didn't show in this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you're still here, please like and subscribe. Thank you.